Mr. Caleb Williams, the presumptuous number one pick in the NFL draft, the guy that everybody is calling Patrick Mahomes 2.0. You know, I think one of the only areas where he could potentially be Patrick Mahomes 2.0 is arm talent and paternal distractions off the field, because both of their dads have been doing everything they can to be detrimental towards their careers. In the case of Patrick Mahomes, his dad has been extremely problematic, controversial, and then like gets arrested and gets a DUI before the Super Bowl, his third, I think, DUI. Like the guy is just not doing Pat, his son, any favors. In the case of Caleb Williams, his dad is like his agent, I guess. And a long time ago, in the beginning of this process, as it started to really trend up and Caleb Williams, like last season, looked good and won the Heisman, and people were like, yeah, he's going to be the first pick. His dad was stepping in, talking to NFL teams, and he was inquiring if they had any potential or were willing at all to offer Caleb Williams equity in the team. He was actually asking this about teams. And then Caleb came out later on and disputed it, or was like, yeah, that's not entirely true. I don't really know. But again, his dad's his agent. So his dad's been like prepping him for the NFL and all this stuff. And that's just been extremely distracting and detrimental. And I can tell you firsthand, that level of entitlement has rubbed off of Caleb onto Caleb Williams in the most obvious ways. Caleb Williams, in my opinion, from what I saw starting in August of 2023 up until the NFL Combine, has done nothing provide people with red flag after red flag about how he could potentially be detrimental to an organization if he were to be taken by them with the first pick. Arm talent, physical ability, athleticism, no disputing that. You can't say Caleb Williams doesn't have a big arm. You can't say Caleb Williams doesn't have at least a higher level of elusiveness. You can't say he's not an athlete. Those are all true. What you can say also, he's not very tall, 5'11", 6 foot. He's not the fastest guy on the field, right? Because in a lot of cases, maybe you aren't fully developed in those other quarterback categorical situations of arm and accuracy or whatever. But if you're quick and you're super elusive, like Lamar Jackson, like Mahomes to a degree, that can be a different and an extra part of your game that you can provide value at the quarterback position. Caleb Williams is not going to outrun anybody. He's not slow. He can move. He's like Mahomes, though, except slower. And we don't know what his 40 time is because he refused to participate in the NFL Combine. And we'll get to that. But from the start of his junior season up until the NFL Combine, he's just thrown out red flag after red flag after red flag after red flag. That's all he's done. He sat there and answered questions on multiple occasions during his time at USC and at the Combine in a extremely arrogant, sort of off-putting way where he's constantly kind of sarcastically answering questions from reporters, or, you know, he's smirking the entire time, or he's unable to like give a straight answer. And at USC, after they lose games, his body language would be terrible at the podium. His body language would be terrible on the field. He jumped up in the crowd after he lost to Washington and was hugged by his mom and was just seen like sobbing, crying. You know, it's a situation where it's hard because, yeah, it's an emotional drainage to go out and play at a high level like that and then lose. Totally understandable. But if you go through the rest of the draft class, man, at the quarterback position, all those other guys suffered detrimental losses except for JJ McCarthy. But JJ did last year. And let's just say you base the one game JJ lost last year to end his season, and you look at the rest of the quarterback class this year: Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. Did anybody see any of them crying at all? Did anybody see them crying? I'm not saying crying's a bad thing. What I am saying is it's a red flag for NFL quarterbacks, NFL coaches, rather, NFL ownership, general managers, potential future teammates. I'm telling you guys, you can think all you want that it's not a big deal and it doesn't matter and that crying's okay. All of that might be true to a degree. We do live in a new era where, you know, emotions at an all-time high when competing in all things, right? High emotions when you do well, super low when you don't do well. But typically speaking, especially in the National Football League, when a guy goes out and displays negative emotions like that to such an extreme, it is not received well by most of the surrounding cast. Will be affected by that. And at this point, based on what Caleb Williams has done so far, how he's handled himself at USC in times of adversity, how he handled himself after losses, how he displayed his body language, how he answered questions in press conferences in college, and now at the NFL Combine. It's not a matter of his character being potentially in question, or, he's a guy that runs high with his emotions, but for the most part, he's typically held it in check. Now it's gotten to a point where most people aren't questioning if it's a thing, but when it'll break down for Caleb Williams. People are like, you know what, dude? This guy is just so clearly such a pick me, self-driven, lack accountability type guy. And it's like almost a matter of time for Caleb Williams to go out, to get drafted by a bad team, right? Because that's who gets these high picks. Bad teams go to that bad team, struggle immensely in his first season because the offensive line is going to be bad. It's probably going to be a young or newer head coach, a young or newer offensive coordinator. The NFL players are faster, bigger, stronger, more athletic. His scrambling, running around, extending plays is not going to work. It's not going to play at the NFL level. He's going to have some adversity. He's going to struggle. And then it's almost seemingly inevitable. He's going to have a meltdown. He's going to have the cameras on him after he throws his third pick of a game in week 3. And he's sitting there with his head rolled back. He's sitting there, throws his helmet, runs into the locker room, doesn't shake anybody's hand, answers questions at the podium. Like just an arrogant, off-putting person that rubs everyone the wrong way, that he's already managed to pull off somehow, and it's just going to snowball. And if that happens, if he keeps this up, it's just going to snowball. And he's going to go from Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner, #1 overall pick, can't believe the career this guy's having, he's so good, to the extreme opposite. And he's going to become one of those guys that everyone talks about. Remember Caleb Williams? Remember when he won the Heisman and everyone thought this guy's going to be the next Mahomes? Remember when he had all that hype and went #1 overall to the Bears, and then the Bears didn't put a perfect surrounding cast around him? He struggled, and then he melted down. That was crazy. And I think outcome number 2 is more likely than outcome number 1, based on what I've collected from Caleb Williams. I've said it a million times also. There's no questioning his physical his physical and athletic abilities when it comes to throwing a football. He has a great arm. He makes some incredibly difficult throws. He contorts his body in ways that a lot of guys can't do. But when people want to compare him and Patrick Mahomes, to me, you can compare physical ability all you want and say that they're very similar in a lot of ways, which is probably true. But what's also true is you can't compare Mahomes and Caleb Williams because one guy has a pedigree, one guy has a default behavior that he goes into, which is leadership, accountability, getting the ball back, making plays in big moments, good body language, leadership. And the other guy's got all of those things in the opposite direction. And I think that's going to be the ultimate deciding factor of if Caleb Williams is good in the NFL or not. It's not his physical ability. It's everything else. And from what we've gathered and seen so far, the way he's answered questions, the way he's handled adversity, everything he did in college at USC, especially last season, and this whole leading up to the Combine and at the Combine, it's just been nothing but red flags. And it's leading me to believe as soon as push comes to shove, right, and things get a little bit hard for Caleb Williams in the NFL, which, let me just guess, they're gonna, because the NFL is really hard, he's gonna melt down. That's my best assumption. I mean, in the span of 18 months, Caleb Williams won a Heisman. First he transferred to USC, won a Heisman, came back for his junior year, lost 5 games, was on record from his dad/agent asking teams that they'd be willing to give him equity in the team if they drafted his son, on record, and then retracting a statement about how he wouldn't want to play for the Bears. That's a red flag and super entitled and ungrateful. Answered questions at the Combine, shows up to the Combine, is not participating in any drills, is not participating or giving any teams his medical information. The first and only player to ever do that in the history of the NFL Combine. And now we sit here with only pro days between today and the NFL draft. And if I'm a team who even has a remote possibility of drafting Caleb Williams, if I'm a GM and I've got one of the top 5 picks, I'm doing everything in my power to convince the ownership that we cannot take this guy if we want a reliable and mentally tough leadership quality quarterback that we can count on coming out of this draft. And I don't know if there's any other guys available in the draft that are those things, all of them in an amazing way, but I know that Caleb Williams is not good at a lot of the intangibles. And I know for a fact, based on the sources I've seen and talked to, that he's hurting himself in more ways than one on a consistent basis. And it sucks. It's disappointing because I hope the best for a guy that's as physically and athletically gifted as he is. But I just think he's been put on a pedestal his entire life, and that has done him a massive disservice. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Caleb Williams. I hope the best for him as a person. I would like him and everybody to succeed, but based on the information I've collected, I'm not entirely sure that's going to be the case with Caleb Williams in the NFL. I'm not sure. I don't know. I guess we will have to see. And there's a chance this video, this podcast, this clip of me bashing him, not just now, but in recent past, pulled and used when Caleb Williams wins an MVP and a Super Bowl in his rookie year, right? In the hype video, but I just don't think that's the case. I don't think it's likely.